Reverend Smith, can you speak to the barriers that you hear as you talk with families when they begin thinking about implementing spiritual practices at home? Are there any common concerns families have that rise to the surface, and how do you respond to those when they are raised?
Sure. The top three that people mention is time. And I already talked about that in a previous question, but people feel like they don't have enough time. And then the second is people don't feel like they have enough expertise. They feel like, well, I'm not a theologian, or I didn't get a degree in divinity, or I don't know my Bible, or whatever. And for that, sometimes I talk about, and I don't remember where this example came from. I'm sure I got it from somebody else, but this idea that when you have a child, a lot of times we feel inadequate in all of the ways. We feel like, well, what are they supposed to eat? What makes for a balanced diet? What should I feed? And you can't deal with that by saying like, well, I don't know, so no food for you. We just do the best we can. And the more we learn about nutrition, maybe the better the diet is. And we also don't worry too much if we have a Lunchable, and at least I don't. I don't worry too much if there's a couple of days where food is like a McDonald's or a Lunchable or something. We just try to balance that with healthy eating. So I would say that same approach for spiritual formation, to do what you have and what you think will work. And as you learn what your family likes and you learn things that feel healthier to you, you can incorporate those. And then the third thing that families often talk about is not wanting to give their children too restrictive, or too, a lot of people in my circles would say something that's too fundamentalist or too traumatic for their children. So they have a view of faith. Sometimes people will say, well, I don't want to teach my children faith. I want them to grow up and choose whatever they want. And the problem with that is that it doesn't really work that way. If you don't give any sort of boundaries or any sort of framework, then children sort of fill in the gaps from other sources, from culture or from a youth group or from a friend that has a very clear sense of faith. So if what you want is for your children to have an open view of God or an open sort of religious upbringing, then you have to kind of intentionally be about instilling that. You can't sort of say, I'm going to give a blank palette or no palette. And there's Rabbi Sandy Sasso is the one that taught me that. And I think she says that children, by the time they're 5 years old, will have a view of God, whether or not it came from the parents or not. So I guess that's just a caution to get in there and do the work of formation, even if what you want to have as the end result is sort of an open-ended spirituality, to be intentional about making that happen.
That's so interesting that Rabbi Sasso would name that by the age of 5, there's some understanding. So, if we are going to educate our youth about, or not children, about just about anything in the world, giving them at least some good nuggets to take away, even if they seem very basic, is probably better than just having them decide for themselves how that works.
Yeah. And I think, one way you can do that, some very simple language, is to say, you can even say, well, some people believe this, or I believe this, but what do you think? Or I wonder about this, and dad wonders about this, or auntie so-and-so says it this way. And so then you're just upfront and saying it exactly in that way. You're not saying this is what is true or this is what you have to believe, but you're just sharing in conversation like you would with anybody else.
Yeah.